So thanks for joining us today, Justin. How are you?
I'm well, thank you very much. How are you?
Good. I'm very well. I'm very well. So, Justin, you are from the Calm Barn. So, do you want to tell me a little bit about that? So, the Calm Barn, are you actually in a barn? Do you want to tell us a little bit about the Calm Barn?
Thank you. Right now, I'm not in a barn. So the Calm Barn offers mindfulness meditation programs and workshops and wellness coaching based around mindfulness. They are, due to COVID, predominantly virtual at the moment. Those classes are also offered out of a barn conversion, though. So yes, in sort of leafy Hampshire somewhere, there is a barn on a farm where you will find me teaching meditation at different times. But right now, I'm not there.
I was expecting more of a rhyme to come out of that one, a barn on a farm. And it's calm.
Absolutely. Oh, I think there's a book in that, definitely. Maybe it's for mindfulness for children, a bit like the Hungry Caterpillar. I think I'll take that idea. Love it.
So what gives you the most fulfillment about the mindfulness and meditation work that you do with the Calm Barn?
I believe in it myself as a methodology for managing positive mental health, having practiced mindfulness meditation for 24 years. But I think the meaning that I derive more sort of gives me purpose, really, is when I can hear people who haven't found it easy. They've maybe had to overcome some challenges to being more mindful, whether that's day-to-day mindfulness or actually sitting and meditating, but who then report having stuck with it and completed some of the home practice, and then tell me of even small breakthroughs that they've had around perhaps their ability to parent more calmly, or to make decisions more clearly, or just to be a bit more comfortable in their own skin. Those moments for me are what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say your mission is? What would you like the Calm Barn to achieve?
I think that there is a lot of mystique and sort of almost smoke and mirror type of stuff out there about mindfulness and meditation in particular. And I think it can be off-putting for a lot of people. So my mission with the Calm Barn is to make mindfulness and mindfulness meditation as down to earth as possible and as accessible to everybody as possible, so that a larger number of people can bring some mindfulness into their life and as a result have a happier, calmer experience of being, not just during the turbulence of COVID-19, but being in a world that I think is getting increasingly more stressful.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely a perception that people have with mindfulness and meditation, and many people think it very woo-woo, and it's nothing like that. I think it is getting better in terms of people's perception, especially in the corporate world. There's a lot more people acknowledging the benefits and understanding the benefits of mindfulness and meditation, which is really good. I think it's definitely on the right path. So good luck with that mission. I think you'll do very well at it.
Thank you. It's been something that has gradually started to become a lot more mainstream in the last 5 years. And actually with COVID-19, people have been focusing on all different ways to improve their well-being. And I think it's a really good fit with EmpowerPlan as well, and everything that you do and that you're achieving. I guess I would love to know a little bit more about EmpowerPlan. For example, who are the people that you serve and would be your target or ideal client?
So my ideal client at EmpowerPlan are companies who are wanting to provide a better life for their employees, companies who have acknowledged and realized that their employees are their greatest asset and that they need to be cared for and nurtured, and really want to look after their staff. We provide a whole host of wellness tools for employees. We've got an EAP portal where they can log in and access workshops and webinars, which all incorporate rapid transformational therapy. And they've got a whole host of workout videos and hypnosis audios. There's diet plans and nutrition information. There's downloadable worksheets for therapy, life coaching, and even just things that will help them in their family life, tips and tricks that they can use in their family home. So it's a very there's a very large collection of different tools and resources all surrounding well-being for the employees. And the employees can also, the employers themselves have a dashboard so that they can interact with the staff and really track their employees' wellness. We have a wellness tracker within the portal, which enables us to keep an eye on how the staff are feeling, and the employers can then see how that's working for them. So yeah, we're wanting to really work with those companies where their staff well-being and development is their main focus. We can use rapid transformational therapy to get rid of any limiting beliefs, to eliminate any mental illnesses and physical illnesses. And we can also enhance skills in certain areas for the employees as well, which all go into making that organization thrive. So yeah, it's definitely working with, we can work with companies of all sizes. It can be any size of company. We go on site and we do group workshops, and we can work with small groups, or we can work with much larger groups, and all of the workshops and incorporate rapid transformational therapy.
Wow, that's quite an offering that you've got there. And I love the fact that it's scalable. So you can take it into organizations of all different types. So I hadn't quite appreciated before today that there was the live face-to-face or virtual, the live element to this as well, which is really special, in addition to the library of resources.
I think that's where we differ from so many other EAP systems out there. Yes, we do offer one-to-one therapies, and they have got a general counselling option, which can be conducted virtually, but we've also got the rapid transformational therapies, which can be conducted one-to-one. But unlike any other EAP system out there, we actually go out to site and provide workshops, and it's all included in the membership. So we do group workshops working with that company on areas that they find that they're struggling with, or that their staff are struggling with. So if the company are finding a lot of staff are experiencing anxiety, we can do a group workshop to connect with a larger number of people, and to help a larger number of people at one time, working with them on managing their anxiety and helping them to overcome it with a group rapid transformational therapy session included in the workshop. So yeah, that's where we differ. We actually go out to site. It's very personal, very tailored to what that company needs and what the individual needs. The individuals themselves on the EAP platform have an option to be able to set goals for themselves. So they've got a development plan that they set for themselves within their portal as well. So we can track that, and we can work with them to achieve those goals. So if they've decided they want to lose weight, or if they want to build on their self-esteem, we can then put them in front of the webinars that they need. We can then work with them and offer them encouragement and give them those tools that they need to achieve their goals. So it's very personalized, and those site visits definitely set us apart from any other EAP out there.
It's a really special offering, and I got the sense through a lot of those different types of interventions and resources and therapies that you mentioned, that I got the sense that change is at the heart of a lot of that. And that then led me to wonder, if I can ask you, what's the most typically requested change, or no, let's say the most typically reported change that people say in feedback to you that they've been able to achieve as a result of working with EmpowerPlan?
So the most reported change is probably their self-esteem. I think we get a lot of issues presented to us when we're working with people, but a lot of issues can result from not feeling good enough. So their general belief that they're hanging on to, which is presented in not being able to speak very well in public, or not being self-sabotage in their careers or in their life, in their relationships, generally tends to stem from not feeling good enough about themselves and that lack of self-esteem. So yeah, generally the biggest change we have is giving people a newfound love for themselves,
Yeah.
and that ability to nurture themselves and see themselves as being good enough in life.
That's amazing. I want a bit of that EmpowerPlan myself. Oh, it's really good to understand a bit more about that. And I hope on another podcast I can talk to you and ask you a bit more about the RTT side of things, the rapid transformational therapy, because that is fascinating.
Yeah, no problem. We can certainly arrange that and shed a bit more light. It is a fascinating therapy, and I could talk actually for about 3 hours on rapid transformational therapy, but that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about toxic positivity. So today's topic, we've brought you in today to talk about toxic positivity. Now, I know a lot of people will be wondering what the hell that is. So, yeah, toxic positivity. Do you want to jump in? Shall we start and just let people know what that really is, what that really means?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is somewhere a definition that really encapsulates what toxic positivity is about. My own version or my own definition, I suppose it came about as a result of being on Instagram for a number of years now, and being connected to and following a number of people who are influencers in the field of things like positive psychology and well-being and coaching and leadership. And I was seeing a lot of times in my feed a lot of messages that were really, really, I'd say beyond encouraging, but almost enforcing that we should, and I use the word should quite, with emphasis, that we should be living a life that is always smiles, it's always good vibes only, that hashtag, and that, we have to look at our lives and almost that thing with social comparison and social media measure up against some of these Instagram posts that come out a lot with these hashtags and different phrases that are encouraging us through really, really difficult times to almost just think positive and it will all be okay. That encapsulates it for me, I think. Also the hashtag good vibes only, that I think I've used it in the past, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But what it seems to suggest is that, that only good news, please, only good posts, only good content that's positive and smiling and worded carefully to make life have this filter or this gloss that Instagram is so good at, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And what about those of us who fall a bit short of that? Going back to what you said to do with love, that's where it comes from for me, is this downside of positivity is the falling short of, or not feeling good enough, or feeling less than, that can present itself for a lot of us, probably, if we're honest, all of us at times, when faced with what other people are doing to get through the pandemic. That sort of benchmarking I know I did early on in the pandemic about, why am I not making banana bread like everybody else? What's wrong with me? Why have I not learned a new language? Well, I was busy sort of saving a business at the time, actually, and doing homeschooling and just putting one foot in front of the other. So how come I'm not as good as all these people?
I think a lot of people actually felt it during the pandemic with things like that, didn't they? Especially with the homeschooling side of things, because people do constantly compare themselves to social media. And is that really a good thing? Is what people are seeing on social media real? Or is it just the perception of what people want them to see?
Yeah.
Off camera, are they really pulling their hair out like everybody else and running around picking up all the mess that's being caused after the picture's being taken? So
yeah, I suppose it's where there's a line that blurs for me between, something that's absolutely a marketing photo shoot, where, of course, you don't want to be there with a little bit of your breakfast down your front of your shirt, or the office is untidy. And therefore you do create or manufacture a backdrop and a professional image. But I think that's okay, because, we all know that all organizations and all companies have to do that to raise awareness. And why would you want to present as anything less than a professional outfit? I think that the problem I have is when you have posted something on social media, and I do keep naming Instagram here because it often is Instagram in my experience, but when you post something on social media saying, hey, I've just hopped out of bed and this is me having my smoothie at the start of the day, and there's a full face of makeup and they've had their hair done, or if it's there's a guy who I follow, he's actually a friend of mine, so I do still follow him, but this irks me a little bit. Lots of the photographs he posts are about achievement and about positivity in a sales performance culture where he works, and he always has his shirt sleeve pulled up a little bit to show you the brand of his watch, which is always strategically placed in the thing, almost like, here's my lifestyle that I lead. People sometimes do it by leaving, I've noticed, their car keys with their brand of car really clearly, or sometimes sitting, I'm on a roll now, sometimes sitting in their car, doing something about their positive mindset for the day ahead, and it will sort of deliberately have the fact that they're driving a Jaguar and it will be there on the steering wheel. And I just sort of think about me in my car that's 20 years old, and comparison. So yeah, I guess it's one of those comparison things that leads me to have a problem with it, in that, look, I'm all for positivity. I'm very much strengths-based with a lot of my work, based on positive psychology. But positive psychology is more than just always think positive or always look on the bright side of life, as Monty Python said, because it feels like sometimes when people are unrelentingly positive and only want to hear positive things, that there is a dismissal of anything other than that. And actually, for a lot of people, their experience, whether it's physical or mental health, work challenges, relationship breakdowns, financial worries, where they want to have a voice and they want to share that they're actually not good vibes only right now. They're actually in a bit of a tough place.
Yeah. So let's talk about the effects then. So all this positivity that's occurring on social media, I experienced it not so much on Instagram, but on Facebook. And I actually came off Facebook for a while because I found that scrolling through was making me feel worse when I was on there. Yeah. So I came off. So yeah, social media is such a good example, really, of toxic positivity. But in terms of the effects that can have on people, what would you say the biggest things are that people how it will affect them? What sort of things will they experience if they're constantly having this toxic positivity around them?
I think it can teach people over time to deny or push away or numb down or numb out any emotional experience other than positive. And I don't really like getting into the territory of labeling emotions as positive or negative, because I think emotions are all just emotions and they all serve a purpose. So I've seen it where people have said to me, I'm trying really hard to be positive, or I'm trying really hard not to be disappointed, or I'm trying really, really hard not to feel frustrated and hurt. And then they'll share a story with me, a real life story from their experience where anybody would feel frustrated or hurt, or let's call it, for shorthand, a negative emotion. And what that can lead to when people almost disconnect from themselves a bit, really, is a lack of integration. And at its most fundamental level, what people report once they open their eyes to the fact that it's okay to not have rose-tinted spectacles every moment of every day. It's okay to experience anger. It's okay to experience sadness. It's completely psychologically healthy and normal at different times to feel frustration or let down. Yeah. Of course, what you do with it is important, whether you act upon that mindlessly on automatic pilot, or whether you do it with some more mindfulness and notice what's there and explore it and take into account what you want instead of what you've currently got. But I think it's probably back to, I guess, when you've maybe worked with people who've experienced the bereavement, and nobody would think of saying to somebody who's experienced a bereavement, just get over it, or just think positive, because those are some significant life events that we can all relate to, and we know how insensitive that would be. But sometimes I've heard people using some of the sort of toxic positivity language about people who have had, say, a medical diagnosis of something, or who have experienced redundancy. And it feels like they're being sort of pushed aside with a glib, they're there, it'll all be okay, rather than really
dismissive.
heard.
Well, this has happened, but look on the bright side.
Absolutely. Yeah. But, you've lost an arm in this car crash, but at least you've got another arm. I mean, from my point of view, you know me already, Nadine, and I have multiple sclerosis, and somebody in not my immediate family, but my extended family, upon my diagnosis and sharing it with them, said, oh, well, at least it's not cancer. Count your blessings. And actually, I wasn't really turning up in a bit of a funk saying like, oh, isn't it terrible? I was just sharing with them. And it just felt really like, yeah, that's true. I don't have cancer. That's absolutely correct.
Did you feel at that point that you weren't allowed to experience any feelings about actually being diagnosed with MS? Did you feel like they'd not acknowledged that emotion at all?
It did feel like that. And it also has led me to be less open with them. And it's a shame, because they could be a source of support potentially. I think so. And it just felt really crass and really ouch, just like, whoa, what would make you think of saying that? And then and then the same person started to talk to me about whether I had attracted some negativity into my life through who I hung out with, or how my thought patterns, and maybe almost blaming me for having MS. It was really bizarre.
It's funny you should mention that, actually, because you tend to think about situations where you always find that people say, oh, your bad luck comes in threes. So you'll wake up in the morning and your alarm will go off, and you'll knock over a glass of water at the side of the bed, and it'll go all over the floor and all over your phone. And then when you stand up out of bed, you slip on the water because it was on a wooden floor, and you're thinking, oh, what's happening here? So then you get yourself ready to go out, and you're going to get the train, and it starts raining, and you've not got your umbrella, and you're starting to feel a little bit down in the dumps, and like the universe has got it in for you on that particular day. And then you get to the train station, and the train leaves the platform before you've even got on it, and you just sort of imagine then sort of somebody coming up to you, seeing your despair as this train's leaving, and saying, they're there. And you sort of explain what's happened through your day, and that they sort of say, well, maybe you should just think more positively, and some more positive things will start happening. And you think, well, you can sort of see that they're trying to make you feel better, but all in all, they actually make you feel much worse in saying that. Oh, so I brought this all on myself then, really?
Yeah. There's a time and a place, I think, for some of that reframing that I think maybe people are trying to do there. But my other concern, I think, about toxic positivity is that it can stop us really connecting with each other.
Yeah.
Because it's not really being present with somebody and hearing them talk about their preoccupations or their worries or their pain. If we jump straight to, have you thought about this? Or, just try not to attract negative stuff into your life. It's a shame, because those can feel like platitudes, and they can feel like fake saccharine sort of jolliness that okay, yeah, I'd love to feel better about this, but there are probably stepping stones to getting there. When you've had that bad day and you've spilt the water and trodden on the cat and slipped over and it's raining with no umbrella, there are probably a few stepping stones to getting you onto an even keel again. You can't just switch on and go like, jazz hands all over again and everything's fine. That only happens in old 1950s musicals.
Yeah.
My life's not like that anyway.
No, I don't think anybody's is. I think that, the big thing is that acknowledgement of emotions, isn't it? And I think if people can go about their life being mindful to acknowledge other people's emotions. If they are experiencing something that's causing them to feel a certain way, just to acknowledge that feeling before you start jumping in and trying to make them feel better. Simply acknowledge that emotion that they're feeling first.
Yes.
One thing that I tend to find as a rapid transformational therapist is that if you don't acknowledge that emotion, it'll get trapped somewhere within the body and it has to find another way of screaming. So we'll have somebody coming to us with a physical condition that has developed because of a trapped emotion that's been left unacknowledged, and it's finding another way of screaming, and it's screaming within the body. So we tend to find a lot of that with physical conditions when we're treating it in rapid transformational therapy. Wow. That it's all to do with that trapped emotion. So not acknowledging those emotions can not only cause you issues in terms of your mental well-being, but it can actually have an effect physically as well, which is something that we've definitely found in rapid transformational therapy.
That's really amazing. I'd love to know more about that on another podcast, actually, because I've wondered about, some of the, at its most immediate level for me, I know that when I am experiencing unexpressed tension, so by that, I mean, I haven't spoken to somebody about the source of that tension or taken action. I know that I hold one of my shoulders, my right shoulder, slightly differently. As I sit at my desk, I then get pain in my right shoulder blade. I also chew my tongue. So at a really immediate level, I can see the connection straight away there with, holding on to things and that tension coming out. What I'm really, really curious about how you've explained how RTT works there is that there may be things that over time accumulate. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah. It takes a lot of time for these things to transpire, but yeah, the body and mind connection is so powerful. It really is. And that connection of that mind, that emotion within the mind transcending into something physical within the body, it's quite fascinating, really. It really is.
It's something that you, I guess, when you're trained in RTT, I suppose you apply it a lot to yourself as well, and that's something that you do as part of your training, or is it how you live your life as well, would you say?
You tend to become very self-aware. I suppose you yourself do as a mindfulness teacher. You're constantly aware of whether you're being mindful in the things that you're doing throughout the day, and you can use that as a tool to refer back to. Training in rapid transformational therapy, we have access to a whole host of other therapists, and we're lucky in that during our training we have to obviously do so many hours of practice, and we practice on each other, so we get to release a lot of our demons before we even start to work on everybody else. So we're quite lucky in that sense. The amount of therapists that I know have come through the training, and they've gone into the training unbeknown to them having very specific issues, and coming out of the training completely different.
Wow.
It is fascinating. It really is.
It can be really a community when you encounter a community like that, learning the same topic but coming from different backgrounds and understanding why you're there, learning together, and then how you use this professionally. Those sorts of courses are such an opportunity to deepen your knowledge and to build up a community, become more expert, and then ultimately better serve the people that you work with, can't they? It sounds great.
Yeah, it really is. So in terms of it was one thing that drew me to this topic really of negative positivity was because of this issue, because of it transforming into ignoring your emotions and things. It really sort of triggered an interest in me. It's something I'd actually never come across before until you mentioned it, until we started talking about what topics we were going to work on the podcast. I'd never heard the phrase at all before. You're kind of aware that it is an issue, but I'd never actually given it a definition, given it an actual name.
Yeah.
What was the first moment you realized that it was an issue for you? Was it through scrolling through social media, or was it something else?
It was bizarre, but I will confess I realized it when I was watching a film.
Oh.
And the film is called Inside Out, and it's a Disney Pixar film. You know the one?
I do know the one. I was watching it the other day, and I was actually going to post a post on LinkedIn about Inside Out because of its connotations with the mind and how interesting it was in terms of what I do in RTT. So yeah, go ahead, carry on about your film.
I have to be honest and say my son was a bit sort of meh about the film. We've watched it again since, and he's a bit more into it, but I absolutely loved it. And I thought that the way that the film is using these characters to be the emotions inside the head of this girl, who's had to move house, and she's got all the challenges of being a teenager, but the character in it called Sadness, who is blue, and she touches things, and then they sort of, you know, they go blue, and then she talks like this, and she's, oh, everything's really, really down. And what I thought was good was the message of the film was that sadness, just like other emotions that we may prefer not to experience, are an integral part of being a human.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be seen as the bad guy, because certainly for the earlier half of the film, I was getting really annoyed with sadness because she just kept touching lovely memories and making them sad. Yeah. So she was made out to be the bad guy of the movie. And then you see, actually, no, you need to have the full range of emotions available to you and our experience. So it was that film that got me to really realize that, yeah, I'm at times holding myself up to this ideal from other people that I follow on social media or I'm connected with, that life has to constantly be about hustle and striving and success and smiling with really, really white teeth, by the way. That, you know, real life's not like that. And real life, certainly in the last 18 months during COVID, hasn't been like that. And there's been a bit of a, I think, a bit of a great awakening and opening up of our lives, warts and all, through things like people doing Microsoft Teams and Zoom calls with colleagues, and you can see the state of the laundry hanging up in the background, or the other half walking in and out, the dog barks. And our lives haven't had this filter on them because of COVID. And I quite like that opening up.
Yeah, it's stepping into reality almost, isn't it? And realizing that things aren't as perfect as they once seemed. I think we all sort of hit the ground with a huge bump when COVID hit, and we're just sort of stepping through those stepping stones to start to come out of that. But we're emerging completely with our eyes wide open now in terms of what life is about, what reality really is. And not hiding behind those Instagram pictures and things is a huge thing, I think. So in terms of finding that balance, we've obviously spoken about what toxic positivity is and how it can affect people, and that things are not always sunshine and roses, and that sometimes we have to acknowledge those emotions. But we also know that being positive has its upsides, and that we do need to remain positive in certain aspects. So how would you say that we need to find that healthy balance between being positive but not allowing it to be toxic?
Yeah, being positive and thinking in a strengths or an appreciative way, a strengths-based way, is how I like to lead teams. It's how I believe I'm the best version of myself as a parent. And I think the balance is achieved through, you said earlier on, self-awareness and knowing yourself and understanding the things that can tip you off balance a little bit and make you become a bit more hyper aroused and anxious than you would normally be, or the things that might tip you into hyper arousal and low mood. And I think that self-awareness can mean you can look out for those early signs that you're heading there. And first and foremost, the balance is achieved when you notice that you are perhaps not at your best in that moment, by allowing it to just be there. So allowing that emotion or that thought that is not Instagram ready to just be there, just witness it. In mindfulness, we talk a lot about witnessing the breath and witnessing bodily sensations, witnessing our thoughts go by. So witness that emotion and witness it, be alongside it. You don't need to indulge it and cling on to it or push it away and deny it. but just let it be there. And if you can name it as well, give it a name, give the emotion a name. If it's an emotion that's difficult, label it. In my mind, I tend to do that with a little post-it note. Other people do it by sort of writing a Sharpie on a balloon, and it's then in a balloon.
Yeah.
Lots of methods available. You might have some of your own that you want to throw in there.
Not really. I think it is literally, in terms of the acknowledgement, I think it's finding that person that you can say, I feel, and be comfortable enough to say, I feel this way, and know that that person will acknowledge that feeling. And I think it's important to find that one person in your life where you can go to them and acknowledge it. And if you've not got that person, standing in front of the mirror and saying it to yourself and acknowledging to yourself how you feel is quite good. We tend to use the mirror quite a bit in terms of our TT. We get people to write on their mirrors, that's it, write I am enough on their mirror, so that they can see it looking at themselves and seeing those words when they look at themselves. And I think using the mirror for things is a great tool and great way to really connect with yourself a little bit, and just looking at yourself in the mirror and acknowledging yourself and acknowledging your emotions.
And those emotions, when we have them, are part of us, aren't they? And they're part of us, the whole us, and we're still worthy of love, or there's the L word again, we're worthy of love, or we are good enough, or we are able to flourish in spite of this weakness or deficiency or temporary feeling of, dissatisfaction or an unpleasant emotion. So I think naming it can take the power out of it as well. If it's a sort of difficult emotion to hold on to. Certainly a technique that I share with people on mindfulness courses, it's not my own, it's probably an adaptation of many people's approaches, but is to say to yourself when you're having a thought, okay, so perhaps when you are alone and you're mulling over the day or thinking about a problem that might be growing in your mind, is using the phrase, I notice that I'm having the thought that, and then insert the thought. And here's an example of the difference. So I might say to myself, I'm such a loser. Notice the difference between that and I notice I'm having the thought that I'm a loser. There's less identification and sort of power in terms of now my identity in the first one is I'm a loser. And that's an example that is not overly sort of positive in terms of denying that thought. You're still acknowledging that the thought's there, but rather than it becoming who I am now, it's actually I'm a person who has thoughts, and one of those thoughts right now is that I'm a bit of a loser. And you can then almost laugh at it and have a sense of humor and hold it sort of more gently. And those techniques, they originate from therapy, they originate from mindfulness thinking, and from genuine positive psychology, which is about being appreciative of our strengths as well as our deficiencies. So I would always recommend people to explore that through looking at blogs about positive psychology, or watching some TED Talks, Martin Seligman being one that comes to mind, to just really understand how positive psychology isn't the same as this sort of just think positive thinking stuff that you see out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important once it's finding that balance, like you say, you mentioned before, it's not dwelling on that emotion. Once you've acknowledged it, you feel it's sensing that freedom. Once you've acknowledged that emotion, it frees you up to then move on from it. Once you have given it that recognition that it needed, you can then move on, and you can then begin to think, so how am I going to feel better? Because you're never really going to be able to climb out of that hole, and you're never going to be able to feel better and think, right, what can I do to make myself feel better, if you never give it that acknowledgement in the first place. So it's like you said, it's a step-by-step process once you get into that cycle. So the first side of it is to acknowledge it and to feel it and to know that it's there, to recognize it. But then be free then to move on and think, right, okay, so I know that I feel this at this moment in time. And in order to stop myself from feeling this for a prolonged period of time, I need to do X, Y, and Z. I need to go for a walk out in the forest somewhere. I need to go and be with some other people, be with friends. You can start to think about the things that would make you feel better. And I think that's obviously the next step to getting out of that negative spiral.
Yeah. There's a really great mindfulness practice called RAIN, RAIN. I think it was developed about 20 years ago by a lady called Michelle McDonald, although I encountered it through the work of a lady called Tara Brach, who is a meditation teacher in America. And the acronym stands for recognize, accept, or allow, depending which version you look at. But let's say recognize, accept, investigate, and non-identification. And the investigate stage of RAIN for tough emotions is about being open, if you can, to what that difficult emotion might be trying to tell you, and noticing where in your body you might be feeling it, and observing thoughts as they go past in your mind associated with it. So at times we might then be prompted as a result of that investigation to really consider, what's this trying to tell me, this feeling? What am I prompted to do as a result of it? Yeah. Doing that with our eyes open and more mindfulness rather than on automatic pilot, when sometimes, almost like a trigger, we say things we then regret later, or we send an email that we wish we hadn't. So I think that RAIN acronym can be really, really helpful to process difficult emotions. And it doesn't mean that we then climb into a pit of despair and we don't get out. And I think that's the worry sometimes with people that do post a lot about what I'm calling toxic positivity, is that, well, if we don't do that, what's the alternative? That we just focus on all the bad stuff? Well, of course not. No. And you mentioned a moment ago about, I think what came to mind for me was almost healing, needing to heal. And in order to heal, working out and acknowledging what's not quite right in the first place. And there's a great book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. Okay, you might know it.
Yeah, I've read it. It's a great book, actually.
Really good. Mark Manson's quite a good writer. He's very funny.
He is hilarious.
If I could share a quick quote from his book that I really thought might fit with today, he says, everything worthwhile in life is won through surmounting the associated negative experience. Any attempt to escape the negative, to avoid it or quash it or silence it, only backfires. Yeah. The avoidance of suffering is a form of suffering. The avoidance of struggle is a struggle. The denial of failure is a failure. Hiding what is shameful is in itself a form of shame. I think that's where I saw the link as well with toxic positivity, in that denying things like overwork, overwhelm, stress, relationship breakdown, anxiety, low mood or depression, denying those things happen to people adds to the stigma around some of those things being once upon a time quite shameful, things like mental ill health. So I recommend The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F word. Very good book for the bookshelf.
Definitely. Yeah, I think shame is a very strong thing that you connect with this negative positivity side of things. It does bring shame when you're constantly seeing all this positivity around you, and because you're not feeling it, you're not feeling that positivity, you're not feeling good enough, you're not feeling as though you match up to what you're seeing, and you're actually feeling those flaws but wanting other people to see it differently. It brings that element of shame. So I think that's a very negative thing. It is a very toxic thing that comes out of the toxic positivity side of things. So in terms of toxic positivity, how would you say, what would you say the signs are that you're starting to feel that? I mean, for me, I think you mentioned about scrolling through Instagram, and I think when positivity becomes toxic, for me, I find that it's when you have experienced something or you're feeling a particular way. So you're feeling a negative emotion, but then you are presented with positive quotes. You're presented with a whole heap of positivity. And that's when it becomes toxic, is when you're initially experiencing a negative emotion, but then just constantly bombarded with positivity that you don't want to hear it at the time, and it sends you deeper into that negative spiral.
I think it can feel so far away from where you actually are at that time, that it's unreachable. And I know that a lot of social media posts are meant to inspire, and they're meant to be things that we aim for and go after to motivate us to want to have that lifestyle, or think differently. But when we might be feeling stuck, then that just feels out of reach to a lot of people. And that famous hashtag, "it's okay not to be okay," that's really been around for a while, but it's come to prevalence during the pandemic a lot. Those bombarding posts around relentless, positivity don't take into account that it is okay not to be okay, and it's okay to spend a little bit of time there processing or reflecting or deciding what your next action will be. And during that time, we may not be waving pom-poms and singing songs. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, I think the big thing in there is it's okay to not be okay, but we want you to be able to get you to a point where you can acknowledge it and then overcome it and see the brighter side of things, but not until you're ready to see it.
That's it, absolutely. And not at the, to see that bright option, or the sunnier side of the street, as they say, taken there by a coach or a facilitator or a friend or a social media influencer with a gentle hand under the elbow to just guide you, to nudge you towards seeing that that's possible, is different to the knee in the breastbone approach of a lot of social media, which is like, you will be positive, and you will think positive, and this is not a place for you to be saying you're not feeling great. And if you are, then there's probably something deficient about you, because look, life should look like this. I do have somebody that I still follow on Instagram out of curiosity. But I used to know him from some networking groups in Hampshire when I first started my business about 6 years ago. And he posts a lot about him running his multi-million-pound business from his luxury mansion in Bali, where he lives, and he shows all this stuff. Recently discovered he actually hired the mansion for a day for a load of photo shoots, took loads of different hairstyling products, loads of different outfits, so that all like 2 years worth of social media were shot in a day, with him looking like it was different lengths of hair, even different. It was very, very, very clever, actually.
Wow, very clever.
It was almost like a film production thing. But that's what he's done with his whole, look, you can earn this lifestyle for yourself by following my tips and secrets for only $49.99, pay now, credit card. And actually, he's not even in Bali at the moment. Do you know what I mean? I think he's in Stockport, and it's sort of, what? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just say, hey, I'm in Stockport and I'm working as a coach and I can help you? Like, I want to connect with real authenticity when I look for people to partner with, or people to work with me as a coach. Maybe there's a market in all the other sort of glamorous stuff that looks like everyone's house is from. Do you remember that MTV show called Cribs?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I mean, this guy lived in something that would look, it should be on there, owned by a sort of multi-millionaire basketball player or somebody, or a rapper. But he didn't own it. He just used it for a day.
I think it depends on what kind of client you're wanting to connect with. Like you say, you're wanting to connect with more authentic people. And I think there are a lot of people out there now, and a lot of companies out there now, that they find that they are drawn to more authentic businesses and more ethical businesses and things like that. That kind of market, I think, is getting smaller. I think you're still gonna attract a a lot of customers doing things like that, but it depends what your mission is and what you're wanting from your customers, really, and what you're wanting to achieve for your customers. I think I'm very much the same as you. I'd rather connect with very authentic people. We want to work with people who have got wellness at the heart of them. They're wanting to see better things for their staff. What they're wanting to make more positive changes in their company, and they're the kind of people that we want to help. People that really want that for their staff and are genuine in it, not just somebody who wants to put an EAP system in place because they're then seen to be doing something for their staff. That's you know, where EmpowerPlan, we're wanting to get results. We're wanting to see the changes, not just for them to pay the subscription. So yeah. It's that authenticity, I think, is and it, like you say, it depends on what you want, who you want to attract.
It does, doesn't it? I know when you first asked me at the start of this podcast about, you know, who I want to work with or who I am aiming the Kanban at, and one of the words I used was down to earth, and it's true. I think that mindfulness meditation can feel quite mysterious when you don't know much about it, and it does have its origins in, you know, ancient Eastern philosophy and thinking, and some of that can be quite complex when you look into it and get trained in it. So to make it usable for everyday people in 2021 and beyond, I think it's got to be down to earth. It's got to meet people where they are. So luckily, that means I don't have to hire a yacht or a manor house. I can do what I do, sort of strolling through
from your barn
where I am. Exactly, we're in the, you know, the village where I live, or at the Kanban, where I do some of the work, or just where I am today, sitting in the office. And if some people are looking for a much more sort of glamorous Los Angeles version of what I do, then I won't be the right person for them, and they will deselect me before they even work with me, and that's okay too. So I think it's good that mindfulness, well-being, therapy, and physical wellness as well has reached so many more people during the pandemic through necessity, through employers realizing that this is something we need to be doing. But as you said there, it is about the results and people really using it and seeing the results of the excellent work you do with EmpowerPlan, rather than just, oh, aren't we a good employer because we've got EmpowerPlan in and we've signed up 380 people this month.
So what would you say in terms of, from a mindfulness point of view, in terms of the toxic positivity, what would you say the best mindfulness technique would be for somebody who thinks, oh, I think I'm experiencing a bit of toxic positivity here? How would you say to them, this is your best way to deal with that situation?
I think I would suggest invite them to, there's a technique called STOP, S-T-O-P. And the S stands for literally for stop what you're doing. So that means look away from your phone if you're scrolling through Instagram, or if you're looking at your PC, to just turn your chair away for a moment, literally for a second or two. So that's the S of stop. Stop. T stands for take a breath. So take a complete cycle of a couple of breaths in and out, just your normal everyday breathing, and pay attention to that experience of the breath coming in and out a couple of times. The O is about observing what's happening in terms of, what am I feeling physically? What thoughts are going through my mind at this moment about this experience I've just broken away from? And observing an emotion. If there's an emotion there, stick a post-it note on it or label what that is. And then the P is proceed. The P of stop is about going back to whatever it was you were doing, but proceeding almost with any insights that have arisen in you from having stopped, from having paused for a little while. And that can just get you back to your phone and going, you know, do I really want to go back onto Instagram? Actually, you know, do I want to scroll through LinkedIn if everybody else seems to be living their best life and doing voluntary work and making bloody banana bread, you know? I think the other thing I would say gently to people, and it is an invitation, is to be selective about what you consume and what you look at in terms of media, social media, and dare I even say it, to be selective about who you spend time with. Not for a moment saying anyone needs to ditch their friends, not at all. But in terms of being around people who are also open to experiencing the full range of emotions, rather than just positive.
Depends on like you say, you don't want to encourage people to get rid of their friends, but if you're very consciously aware of how that person makes you feel, you can then pick and choose your moments when you're spending that time with that person. If you're acknowledging your own emotions and you're aware of your own emotions, you can then think, well, this person makes me feel better about myself, so I'll spend some time with that person, whereas this person doesn't. So I know I need to be strong emotionally when I'm spending time with that person, because I know what kind of a person that they are. And just being very self-aware and aware of the people that you're spending time with, I think.
Gives us again more choice, doesn't it, with our eyes open, and how much time we might spend with them. And the other thing you can do with Instagram, and I think probably the other social media things, is you can stop unfollowing people for a while. You can always refollow them again, or you can stay friends and connected, but just turn off their news feed for a while and just see, does that make any difference? It doesn't mean you're breaking off a friendship, but it just means you may not see so many of the things that seem to be not leading you to feel good about yourself.
The unfollow option is great, and you can do the same on Facebook. Actually, I've done it with a few people who tend to, I've got friends and friends of friends who, they're very argumentative, so they might always post a negative comment on somebody else's images, or they'll pick a fight with somebody just because it makes them feel better about themselves. And you can sort of see the kind of things that they're doing, and I tended to find that when I saw that, it made me a little bit angry in some way, and it gave me a negative emotion. So in order to not fall out with them, or show them that there was that I had an issue with what they were doing and the things that they were saying, I just unfollowed. And it's a very diplomatic way of doing things and taking care of your own emotional well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. Guarding it carefully, and back to love, really, loving yourself enough to say, this is a thing I can do that's a simple step that will lead to me being more content and calm and more authentic.
Yeah, definitely. Authenticity is the key. So anything else that you want to say with regards to toxic positivity? Any more tips and thoughts on it before we depart?
I think finally would just say, don't beat yourself up if, like me in the past, you have used hashtags like positive vibes only. There's a hashtag, feel good Friday and Friday vibes and those sorts of things, which I still use those because I think it's nice to just bring a bit of fun into social media, even, and especially for business related social media. But I know that in the past, years ago, I didn't fully appreciate the whole good vibes only thing was suggesting that is the only option, and that it's not okay to be not okay, Yeah. So if, like me, you're reflecting and thinking, ooh, have I ever contributed to this? Don't worry about it. Just keep your eyes open to what you're sharing, what you're posting in future. And we're all a work in progress, aren't we? So
we are. I think it's good to share positivity and continue to do so, continue to share your positive aspects, but I think do so with mindfulness that sometimes people may look at it and it may not be what they want to see, and just acknowledging the fact that sometimes people need to acknowledge their emotions, and that they're not always going to want to see the positive aspects of things.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think it's still good to share positivity in and try and bring it into other people's lives, but doing it in a more mindfulness way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to offer a buffet, I suppose, with my social media of positivities in there, mixed in with a few other things, and humor. And I think the buffet approach for me feels right, rather than the enforced force feeding of positivity.
Yeah, definitely. Great stuff. Well, thanks ever so much for joining us, Justin. Thanks for your insight in this absolutely wonderful topic, and no doubt enlightening to a lot of people. Like I say, I'd not even realized that it was actually a thing until we started talking about it. You kind of just go through life feeling it, but never really giving it any sort of real thought. But I suppose that's what you're good at. You're good at bringing mindfulness to people's lives. So thank you very much for your input there. And hopefully you will join us again for another podcast in the future.
I will indeed. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for asking me in today.
No problem.